10 days, this is all I have left before my vacation, which I was looking forward to with such impatience, as a child probably looks forward to Christmas morning, and I honestly admit that I was literally jumping on the walls with excited anticipation, unable to focus on anything but thoughts about how soon I will be able to leave behind the gray bulk of the office, the monotonous hum of the air conditioners, endless task lists, and the depressing feeling that everything in my life has been sorted out by someone other than me. My name is Anna, I am 26 years old, and I am so tired of the hustle and bustle of the city that I sometimes found myself dreaming of giving up everything and going wherever I wanted, and now, finally, I have the opportunity, a legitimate, well-deserved, necessary pause, 10 whole days away from all this. And before we continue, write in the comments from which city you are watching this video. Enjoy watching. I was going to go to a place where every stone reminds me of a carefree childhood, where the wind from the lake smells of pine needles and memories, where the walls of the old house keep the warmth of my mother's hugs and the quiet voice of Aunt Margaret, who over the years has become closer to me than my own family. This house, which I inherited 2 years ago after my aunt's death, stood on the very edge of the water, 6 hours away from my current home, and seemed to have been torn from another time, spacious, wooden, with floors creaking with every step, and large windows offering a mesmerizing view of the lake, shimmering in the sunlight. I spent a lot of summer holidays there, when everything seemed easier, when my mother was still alive and my father, laughing, threw me into the air, and then taught me to swim, holding my palm. Back then, the lake house was our outlet, a place where we forgot about illnesses, bills, and worries, and it wasn't until years later that I realized how special it was. My mother died when I was 16, and cancer tore her out of our lives so suddenly and mercilessly that my father and I, devastated and lost, couldn't come to our senses for a long time. We just existed side by side, not knowing how to talk to each other, how to move on, and it seemed like everything that had bound us died with her. My father met Francesca a year after my mother's death. She worked with him in the same company, a widow with 2 adult daughters, Laura and Sarah, who were several years older than me, confident, loud, as if they had grown up in another world. When they all moved in with us, I tried my best to be friendly, compliant, and obedient, but there seemed to be a transparent wall between us from the very beginning. We were polite, shared space, and said the right words, but it wasn't a family, it was a performance in which no one wanted to play, but everyone they depicted the perfect picture. What really hurt me was the change in my father. He found less and less time for me, was passionate about the life of Francesca and her daughters, praised them, laughed with them, attended their events, and I, his only daughter, suddenly felt like a stranger in my own home, displaced, deprived of the right to that a love that seemed unshakable before. When I left to study in another state, I felt guilty, but at the same time relieved. For the first time in a long time I did not have to prove that I had the right to be, that I did not violate someone's comfort simply by existing. I rarely came home, and each time I felt like a guest. The house had changed. Francesca had redone everything, new curtains, furniture, photos on the walls that didn't show me, just her girls, and my father's gaze gliding past, as if he himself hadn't noticed how I was becoming a shadow. She was never openly rude, no, everything was much more subtle, sophisticated, polite words with ice filling, phrases like, "Oh, Anna, you're home again," or "I thought you weren't coming this weekend," little things that formed a huge wall of alienation. When I graduated from university, I had to temporarily return home to save money for my own place, and those few months became torture. Francesca seemed to have turned into a mistress of passive aggression. Cooking dinner for 4, even though there were 5 of us, arranging family outings, forgetting to inform me, and my father, busy with work and a new life, as if he didn't notice, or if he did, he pretended that everything was fine. Moving was a breath of air. I could finally breathe, feel like myself, without looking back, without apologizing for my existence. It was then that I began to visit Aunt Margaret more often, an elderly woman with clear eyes and a sharp mind who lived alone in the house by the lake. We talked for hours. I brought her groceries, helped her with the housework, and over time our meetings became for me that rare island of comfort and genuine intimacy that I missed so much. When she died at the age of 92, I felt like I was losing the last person who really saw me not as someone's daughter, not as an inconvenient guest, but as Anna. My father and Francesca attended the funeral, of course, but it seemed that their thoughts were not occupied with the memory of the deceased, but with her possessions. And a week later, when my lawyer called and informed me that my aunt had left me everything, the house and a considerable amount of money, I did not know how to react. Over dinner, I muttered that maybe I should sell the house and buy a place closer to work, to which Francesca immediately responded with her eternal practicality. Take your time, it's a great investment. Houses by the lake are only getting more expensive. We could use it for family trips. My father nodded. Your stepmother is right, Anna, take your time, leave it for now. That's what I did. I gave them a spare key, guided by the naive belief that simple trust and a gesture of goodwill would be treated with due respect, that they would understand the boundaries and use the house only by agreement, by prior conversation, maybe even occasionally, when I myself would not be able to go, when they would especially need to stay in nature. But what I did not expect, what I was completely unprepared for, was that they would take my gift as an invitation to permanent, unhindered use, as if this house, handed over to me by the will of a person dear to me, had suddenly become their cottage, their resort residence, their personal recreation area. They started going there without warning, without permission, without a simple respectful call, and, most importantly, they brought Laura and Sarah with them, as if they had some legitimate connection to this place, as if everything that connected it with my life was unimportant, erased, meaningless. At first, I didn't think much of it. I was too busy with work, too tired, too indifferent to the little things to worry. They cleaned up after themselves, didn't break anything, didn't leave any traces of disorder, and I tried not to wind myself up, convinced myself that everything was fine, because the house was empty most of the time anyway. But then something happened that not only shook me up, but also changed my view of their behavior forever. It was summer, and I took a few days off. Longing for solitude, peace, and quiet, I wanted to escape from the hustle and bustle of the city and, as before, allow myself the luxury of waking up to birdsong and watching the fog slowly creep over the lake. When I pulled up, the house looked the same as I left it, except for the cars parked in the driveway, and at that moment, I still hadn't realized the whole picture. But when I entered the house through the front door, I was deafened by the hum of music coming from the back porch, and clear, uninhibited laughter. When I got there, I saw Laura surrounded by a noisy group, at least 6 people, most of whom I didn't know, all with glasses, laughing, smoking, carefree, as if they had arrived at a rented villa, and not invaded someone's private area of rest. Laura, noticing me, abruptly changed her face and asked with surprise, and, as it seemed to me, with irritation, "What are you doing here?" I stood on the veranda, not believing my ears, amazed by her tone, her insolence. "I live here," I said with confusion and anger, unable to understand why I had to explain it at all. "This is my house." "Well, we're having a party here," Laura snapped, pursing her lips. "You're kind of spoiling the whole atmosphere." Her words were like a slap in the face. I took a deep breath, trying to control myself, but my voice faltered when I said, "I'm sorry, this is my home, Laura. I decide who is welcome here." Tension hung in the air, thick as a cloud before a thunderstorm. Her friends froze, exchanging awkward glances. Someone put down a glass, someone reached for a bag, and Laura looked at me with resentment, as if I had violated not only their plans, but also her personal right to comfort. The party broke up quickly. Some of the guests left the same night, the rest left the house in the morning without saying a word, without even leaving a note. And in the evening the phone rang. Francesca, her voice was strained, her words measured. "As always, Anna, how could you be so rude to Laura and her friends? She just wanted to have a good evening." I could barely keep from shouting, "Francesca, this is my house. I didn't even know they were there." But she continued without listening, "You embarrassed her in front of everyone." I could have been a little more understanding. I almost laughed, from bitterness, from absurdity. Understanding? She said I was ruining their party, in my own house. There was no response, there was only a click, and Francesca hung up. After that, everything became even colder, more tense, more aloof. My father started calling less often, and when he did, he was distant, as if there was an invisible barrier between us, through which he did not dare or did not want to reach out. I resigned myself, decided that now it would be like this, a polite distance, rare calls, fake smiles. That's why I was completely stunned when 3 weeks ago he suddenly called without warning and, in a voice that was particularly soft, almost Apologetic, said, Anna, dear, could you come to dinner tonight? Francesca and I want to talk to you. I almost dropped the phone. We hadn't spoken for several months, hadn't seen each other since the incident, and this invitation sounded like a strange hope, a spark that ran through a dry field. That evening, on the way to them, I felt a strange intertwining of anxiety and something like hope in my chest. What if they understood? What if they saw how I was treated, how it all looked from the outside? Maybe Francesca realized how much she had alienated me from my father, how she had turned the house into a place where I felt superfluous. My father greeted me at the door with a big smile, hugged me, for the first time in a long time, sincerely, Anna, you look great, come in, come in. Francesca stood in the living room, nodded cautiously, and her voice sounded unexpectedly soft. Hi, Anna, thank you for coming. She wasn't warm, and she probably never would be, but at least she was trying to look different tonight. So, what did you want to talk about? I asked, settling into the chair opposite them, feeling an anxious excitement building in my chest. My father and Francesca exchanged glances, then he leaned forward, looking straight into my eyes. We miss the times when we were closer, he began, and we know that there has been tension between us lately, but we want to fix it, Francesca added, trying to keep her voice calm. We thought maybe we could all go to your lake house, rest, all together, me, your father, Laura, Sarah and their fiancés, and you, of course. I blinked, surprised. I asked, trying to hide my confusion. Oh, yes, Francesca smiled. Both girls got engaged this year. Laura is with Leon, Sarah is with David, wonderful guys, you'll like them. I felt a slight pain from not knowing that I hadn't been invited, that I hadn't even received a call, but despite everything, the idea of a vacation sounded tempting. I missed, for the house, for my father, even for the illusion that we are still a family. It sounds great, really. When would you like to go? I asked. Next month, the father said. Let's take 10 days off and rest properly. I would be very happy, I said, and it was true. How many of us will there be? Francesca squinted, counting on her fingers. 6 plus you, 7. I nodded, already making mental plans. Going over in my head how much work needs to be done so that the house is ready to accommodate 7 people for 10 days, so that everything looks perfect, so that no one feels the slightest inconvenience, either in everyday life or in the atmosphere. I understood that I would need to clean up seriously, think about sleeping places, stock up on enough food and everything I might need in case of heat, rain, insect bites or sudden illness. In short, provide for everything, like a hostess. Receiving guests, but not just guests, but a family, even if that the strange, twisted shape she had become. I spent the next 2.5 weeks preparing with meticulous care. I used every free evening to make lists, and for the coming weekend I set aside time to go to the house and put it in order. I spent the whole day there, cleaning, washing the bedclothes, scrubbing the bathrooms until they squeaked, vacuuming carpets, rubbing glass surfaces, and by the evening my back hurt, but I was happy. The house was filled with cleanliness, freshness, and it felt like the very state when everything is in its place. I made a long list of foods and supplies, taking into account the possible preferences of everyone present. Vegetarian dishes for Sarah, gluten-free snacks, which I remembered. Francesca preferred light white wine, which my father loved. I bought properly, fruits, vegetables, meat, fish, frozen berries for smoothies, muesli, coffee, tea, cream, toiletries, insect repellents, sunscreen, even new garden furniture for the terrace, comfortable deck chairs and upholstered armchairs with pillows so that you can sit by the water in the evening, wrapped up in a plaid. I bought some inflatable mattresses for the lake, lifebuoys, a badminton set, board games. I wanted everything to be perfect, too perfect, even. 3 days before departure, I felt a pleasant tremor of anticipation in my body. It seemed to me that maybe this vacation could really bring us closer, return, if not the old warmth, then at least mutual respect. I took a vacation from work, packed my things, checked the refrigerator, stocked up on everything I needed, and was already sure that everything was ready when the bell rang. It was Dad. Anna, could you come tonight? He asked, and there was something awkward in his voice. Francesca. And I need to discuss something about our vacation, of course, I replied, surprised but not wary. Did I forget something? I think I have everything ready, but if you need to pick up anything else, just come, or we can talk when I get there. "We'll talk when you get there," he repeated, and hung up. I drove up to their house with a slight smile, confident that perhaps they wanted to offer help, with money, advice, and participation. Maybe Dad will offer to take over some of the shopping, or Francesca will want to discuss the details. I was naive. He opened the door, but he didn't meet my gaze. His face was tense. "Come in, Anna," he said, stepping back inside. Francesca was sitting on the couch, and this time she didn't even get up. Her expression was completely different than it had been 3 weeks ago, and it didn't take long to recognize the Francesca I'd known for the last few years: cold, reserved, with a face that showed superiority, seasoned with barely noticeable irritation. "Sit down," she said, pointing to the chair I had sat in once before, only now the atmosphere was different. "Icy." Dad sat down next to her, but he kept fidgeting with his hands, not knowing where to look. "I was thinking about the menu for our first evening," I began, hoping that the conversation would be practical and easy. I took out my notebook. "I thought maybe I'd cook that salmon dish you liked so much, Dad, with lemon sauce and—" "Anna," Francesca interrupted me, her voice no longer friendly, "we need to talk about a vacation." I was still smiling, even though I felt something tighten inside. "Okay," I said. Francesca sighed, as if she was tired of procrastinating. "We have decided that you will not come with us." I laughed briefly, nervously, thinking it was a joke. "What do you mean?" I asked, starting to lose confidence. "I mean exactly what I said. You're not going on this vacation." The smile faded from my face, and I looked at them both. "I don't understand. This is my home, yes, but this vacation is just for the family," she replied, and there was the same dispassionate confidence in her voice that she had once spoken with. "Are you home again?" I felt like she had hit me. "A real family?" I asked, looking at my father, who was still staring at the floor. "Francesca," I said, trying to speak calmly, 3 weeks ago, both of you invited me. You offered to spend a vacation together. We've changed our minds," she said, shrugging her shoulders. "I will devote this vacation to establishing contact with my daughters and their fiancés. It's an important family time, and to be honest, your presence will only make things awkward." "Making things awkward?" I repeated. "This is my house. We have the key," Francesca said simply. "You can use the house after we're done with it." I slowly turned to my father. I asked, and finally he looked up, his eyes full of guilt, but he didn't say anything. "Anna, maybe it would be better if," he began, "if I let you kick me out of my own house?" I interrupted. "You're being dramatic," Francesca said. "We're not kicking you out of nowhere. We just want to say that this vacation is intended only for close relatives." "So I'm not a close relative?" I asked. Dad winced, and Francesca shrugged again. "You said it, not me." I sat in silence for a while, feeling a heaviness growing in my chest. 3 weeks of preparation, hopes, efforts, and all in vain. "Let me get this straight," I said softly. "Do you want me to let you use my house, which I cleaned, filled with food, all for a family vacation that I wasn't invited to because I'm not a real family member?" "Now you understand," Francesca said, and I could have sworn she smiled. I looked at my father again. "Is that okay with you?" He opened his mouth, but no words came out, and that silence was enough. I got up, picked up my purse, and headed for the door. "Enjoy your vacation, Anna." "Wait," Dad called, but I was already at the door, and behind her, Francesca's voice came, cold and haughty as always. "Don't be so dramatic about everything." I drove home trembling with rage, feeling a wave of anger rise in my chest, spread through my body, beat in my temples, in my palms, in every cell, like a pulsating reminder of what had just happened, of the words that cut like glass, of the looks full of betrayal. That evening, I couldn't sit still. I was rushing around my apartment like a caged animal, replaying the conversation in my head over and over again, trying to find rationality, logic, at least a drop of common sense in it, but I found only mockery. My hands were literally shaking with anger, from impotence, from resentment, from how shamelessly they decided that they had the right to dispose of what belongs to me. How dare they? How did Francesca dare to talk to me as if I were an outsider, a stranger, as if they were doing me a favor by allowing me to be around at all? And Dad just sat there with his eyes downcast, like a coward, letting it all happen, agreeing with her, betraying me again, and this time without excuses. The more I thought about it, the more I fumed. They wanted to relax in my house, eat the food I had bought, sleep in the beds I had rearranged, but at the same time they managed to claim that I did not belong there, that I was creating awkwardness, that I was not a real family. Their arrogance was so brazen, so vivid, that the blood boiled in my veins, and I knew, no, it couldn't just be left like that. I'm not going to let them take advantage of me, pretend that everything is fine, as if I have to accept this production, in which my role is to tacitly retreat. The next day passed in thought. Two desires were fighting inside. One was to call his father, yell, say everything, smash their pretense to pieces, but the other, more cold-blooded, held him back. It wouldn't change anything. Francesca has him by the throat, and he's already proved that he won't fight for me. Then an idea flashed into my head, calm, clear, ominously perfect. Let them think they've won, let them make plans, rejoice, and believe that everything is going according to their script. And I will prepare a surprise for them that they will never forget. That evening, while browsing Facebook, I came across Laura's post, and it took my breath away. I'm so excited about our family vacation next week. Finally, I'll spend time with really important people, without unnecessary drama and uninvited guests. Some people just don't understand when their presence is undesirable, and if the text itself was already quite caustic, then the comments under it exceeded all expectations. Sarah added, "Finally, it's just us," and Francesca, of course, liked it. Even Dad. This post was the last straw. If they decide to play games, then fine, I can play too. I immediately called my friend Sandra, who was always by my side, loyal, loud, ready for anything. "Sandra, do you remember that lake house I told you about? Do you want to go there with me next week? Free vacation, great company, nature, alcohol." She laughed. "Yes, damn it, what's the catch?" "There's no catch, although my family may try to settle down, but I'll deal with it." Drama? Now I'm even curious, what's going on? I told her everything, from beginning to end, and I could hear her face darken. "Those bastards," she said, with a fury shared with me. "I'm on my way, and if more people are needed, I'll take Leon and Ornella, the more the better." I replied, "I want the house to be crowded, so that they feel uncomfortable, so that they understand that they have invaded the wrong place." I devoted the next few days to preparation. I wrote to my friends, called, invited them. By the end of the week, I had 6 people confirmed: Sandra, her boyfriend Leon, her friend Ornella, our mutual friend Tom, my namesake Sarah and her boyfriend Mike. Everyone was thrilled with the idea of a free vacation at the lake, and no one objected to the light family drama. On the contrary, everyone's mood was combative, almost conspiratorial. The day before my family was supposed to arrive, I returned to the house by the lake. I already made an appointment with a local locksmith last week. He arrived in the morning, and in 2 hours he changed all the locks, on the front door, on the back, even on the utility room and the barn. I paid in cash and received a set of shiny new keys. Then I went into the house, took out a bottle of wine, cooked dinner, simple pasta with sauce and fresh basil, and sat on the terrace, watching the sun slowly sink below the horizon, coloring the lake in golden honey shades. Tomorrow will be interesting. I didn't sleep much last night. I went over the possible scenarios in my head. How will they react? Will my father at least try to protect me, or will he remain in Francesca's shadow again? Probably not, but a naive part of me, still hoping, couldn't help but dream that he would finally wake up. Around noon the next day, I heard several cars pulling into the driveway. My heart started pounding, and my chest tightened with anticipation. I went upstairs to the bedroom, where I had a good view of the courtyard, and peeked out from behind the curtain. Here they are. Dad and Francesca are in his car, followed by Laura and Leon in their red Honda, Sarah and David in a blue SUV. Everyone was smiling and laughing, and the atmosphere was festive and relaxed. Francesca, judging by her gestures, had already explained who would sleep where, as if she were the hostess. I watched as they pulled out bags, dragged suitcases. Dad carried a cooler bag, the girls carried 2 bags each. Talking animatedly, Francesca went to the front door, busily took the key out of her purse and inserted it into the lock. Click, nothing. She tried again, the key wouldn't turn. She started turning him around, pushing the door with her shoulder. Her face changed, first surprise, then annoyance. I saw her turn to Dad and say something sharply. He put the refrigerator on, reached for the handle himself, checked the key, but in vain. They went around the house, tried the back door, and got the same result. It was then that the moment of realization came. I saw it in slow motion, like in a movie. Francesca's face changed from confused to furious in a couple of seconds, and the sight filled me with a quiet, grim satisfaction. She started knocking on the front door, quickly and sharply at first, then louder, more insistently, as if her knocking could knock my consent out of the lock, as if the aggression in her voice was supposed to make me feel guilty. I walked slowly, without haste, down the stairs, enjoying every step, every hollow echo in the house, knowing that at this moment, like never before, I feel that I am in control of the situation. The knocking became even louder. "Anna, open this door right now!" screamed Francesca, her voice trembling with anger and, yes, I heard it, from fear, from misunderstanding that her little plan had cracked. I opened the door a crack, leaving the chain in place, and peered through the narrow crack. "Hi," I said pleasantly, arching an eyebrow. "Can I help you with something?" Francesca's face was flushed, bright red, contorted with rage. "What did you do to the locks?" she hissed. "Oh, that's because I changed them," I replied casually, as if discussing the weather forecast. "These are my castles now." "You can't do this," screamed Laura from somewhere behind Francesca. "We have a vacation planned." "How interesting," I continued in the same calm, almost cheerful tone. "Last week, you told me yourself that this vacation is only for a real family, and since, judging by your words, I'm not a real family member, I decided that there was no reason to let strangers into the house." Francesca made a strangled, almost strangled sound, a mixture of horror and offended pride. "You're not serious," Dad finally managed. His voice strained like a string. "Anna, we drove here for 6 hours." "It sounds like your problem," I replied cautiously, feeling satisfaction building inside. "This is ridiculous," shouted Sarah, rushing forward. "Are we your family?" "Are you?" I asked, staring at her as if seeing her for the first time. "Because last week Francesca made it clear that I am not part of your real family, so why should I let people into my house who refuse to accept me as a part of their lives?" Francesca mumbled, trying to find the right words, but they all seemed stuck in her throat. "You can't," she began. "Actually, I can," I interrupted. "This is my house, my name is on the documents, it's up to me to decide who can be here." Leon tried to get in a word. "We have already paid for this vacation, we took time off from work. We bought a new car to get here. It looks like this is your problem," I repeated again, this time coldly, without a trace of a smile. Francesca finally found a voice, but it was rude, shrill, and angry. "You're being selfish. You're vindictive and petty. We are your family." "No," I said calmly but firmly, "you said yourself that I'm not your family. You can't choose when I'm comfortable and when I'm a hindrance. That's it, Francesca, the game is over." I started to close the door, but Francesca abruptly stepped forward, held out her hand as if she wanted to hold the door. "You can't do that. You're ruining our vacation." "It's already ruined," I said, and with a slight effort I closed the door in her face. Outside, they knocked, shouted, begged, demanded, and complained for another 10 minutes. Francesca sobbed, repeating that I had ruined everything. Laura screamed curses that I don't even want to repeat. Sarah declared that I had never been normal. Dad begged, knocked on the door and told me to be reasonable, be above it, but I was no longer going to be above it. I was not going to forgive, smooth over, belittle my own feelings. Finally, I heard the engine start, the gravel crunch under the wheels, and one by one their cars left the driveway. I called Sandra immediately. "The coast is clear," I said. "Get up, are you serious?" "Did you really do that?" She sounded both shocked and delighted. "I really did," I replied, "and it was amazing." By evening, all 6 of my friends were already in the house. We hugged, set up our bags, immediately turned on the music, went out on the terrace and started frying burgers while the aroma of rosemary, garlic, and smoke wafted from the kitchen. We laughed, drank wine, jumped into the lake, swam on air mattresses, and felt a weight lift off our shoulders. It was the best vacation I've had in years. The next week was perfect. We swam from morning to evening, had boat races, fished, and then roasted it over a campfire. In the evenings, under the stars, we sang songs, played cards, and truth or dare, and I couldn't remember the last time I laughed like that, freely, sincerely, without feeling like I was being watched, evaluated, or compared. I felt like myself. This is how a family should feel, not as a commitment, not as a chain of expectations, but as a space where you are accepted. appreciated, and not required to change in order to fit in. Sandra said every day, "This is the best vacation of my life," and I knew she wasn't just flattering. "Your family are idiots," she said on our last evening, pointing at the lake, sparkling in the moonlight, what they lost, and who. I stayed at the house for a few more days after everyone left. I had time off, and to be honest, I didn't want to go back at all. Staying here reminded me why I love this place so much, why it is mine, by right, by feelings, by memory, and why I was a complete fool, allowing my family to dispose of him as their own, while hardly using him myself. It won't happen again. When I finally drove back to the city, packing up the things left after a 2-week vacation, and looking once more at the lake, which greeted me this time not as a sad memory of the past, but as a vivid, strong and warm reminder of my inner freedom, I felt like a completely different person, as if for in that short time, something changed dramatically in me, as if I had gone through a cleansing fire, becoming stronger, more confident, quieter in a good, mature sense of the word. I sat behind the wheel, watched the trees slowly pass by the windows, and thought, that's it, now everything is really different. First of all, myself. When I came home, kicking off my shoes, putting my bags on the doorstep and sitting on the arm of the sofa for a minute, my gaze fell on the mailbox. It was full, and as I leafed through the bills and pamphlets, I stopped when I saw the familiar handwriting, sharp, rounded, too confident to seem natural. Francesca. My heart sank, not from fear, but from dislike, from a premonition of unpleasant things. I opened the envelope, and everything turned out exactly as I expected. 3 pages of continuous reproaches, accusations, and dramatic phrases written with the explicit purpose of hurting, angering, and convincing me of my guilt. She wrote that I was selfish, cruel, that I ruined their vacation, let everyone down, especially my father, who hoped so much for a family reunion. The last paragraph was particularly cloying and at the same time disgusting. I expect you to apologize for your childish behavior. Until that happens, consider yourself excluded from our family. I actually laughed. I couldn't restrain myself, loudly, sincerely, with that nervous relief that sometimes comes when the ridiculously ridiculous essence of what is happening is exposed. Excluded from the family? It was like I was being interviewed at a private club where my candidacy didn't fit the moral criteria. As if it was a threat, I sat down at my computer, opened my email, and wrote, Francesca, I'm not apologizing for anything. Moreover, I don't want to talk to you or any of your family anymore. I wish you a happy life. I clicked send and immediately blocked all their numbers. Dad, Francesca, Laura, Sarah. All of them. I'm tired of playing games, politely swallowing humiliation, listening to half smiles, veiled taunts, and feeling that I'm superfluous in someone else's play. For the next few days, they tried to call from other numbers, from unknown ones, and even asked someone they knew to contact me. But as soon as I heard familiar intonations on the phone, I immediately interrupted the conversation. One time, a friend of Francesca's called, introducing herself as an excited family friend, and I didn't even have to speak. I just hung up. That's it, enough. I no longer had the desire, the strength, or, most importantly, the reason to continue pretending that something else could be fixed between us. A month has passed. It was an ordinary evening. I was leaving work, holding a takeaway coffee in my hands, and my thoughts were far from this whole family epic, when suddenly I saw him, Father. He was standing by my car, leaning on the hood, looking tired, aged, as if these few weeks had aged him by years. He looked at me with a pleading look that made my heart sink inside. Anna, can we please talk? I wanted to walk past that fatigue, that pain, but something in his voice, something human, real, broken, made me stop. What do you want, Dad? I asked quietly. He looked away. Can we go to a cafe? Just a cup of coffee, let's just talk. We crossed the street and sat in a small cafeteria opposite the office building. He ordered coffee, but he didn't even touch it, and I ordered tea, and I just sat there watching him collect his thoughts. I'm sorry, he finally said, and there was no falsehood in those words, only weariness and sincere regret. I'm really sorry, Anna, I was weak. I let Francesca push you away, and I'll regret it for the rest of my days. I stared into the cup. Why now? I asked, what's changed? He ran his hands over his face, as if he wanted to wipe away the guilt. The whole vacation was a disaster. Francesca, the girls, they complained all the time, at you, at the situation, at how everything went wrong. They were unhappy, and they made me unhappy too. And then I started thinking about how we betrayed you, how wrong you were. I looked at him intently. Did you figure it out yourself? Or did Francesca send you to reconnect? He shuddered. She doesn't know I'm here. She's still angry, but I can't do this anymore. Anna, I miss my daughter. I shook my head, repeating in a barely audible voice, you chose them, not me. He nodded, I know, and all I'm asking is for you to give me a chance to fix everything. I stirred my tea, thinking, and felt the internal mechanisms of doubt and resentment noisily arguing inside. Part of me wanted to forgive right away, because I missed him, because he was my father, because it was easier that way. But I knew I wasn't ready. Too much pain, I need time. I finally said, I can't forgive you yet. You really hurt me, Dad, you betrayed me. He nodded, I understand, take your time, but know this, I will no longer have anything to do with Francesca or her daughters. If you want to communicate, it's just us. I'm done with them. I chuckled. It doesn't matter what Francesca says, I don't believe her. I don't want her to be a part of my life. He looked sad, but he didn't argue. Good, then it's just us. Maybe sometimes over a cup of coffee, on neutral territory. Let's see how it goes. I'd like that, I said. We finished our coffee. When he hugged me goodbye, I returned the hug. Everything was not the same as before. The pain hadn't gone away. The anger still lived somewhere deep inside, but it was a start. On the way back, I suddenly realized that it was easier, without all this family drama, without innuendos, without tension. I no longer had to tiptoe around guessing Francesca's mood or flatten myself against walls when it came to her daughters. I could just be myself. That evening, sitting in the soft light of a desk lamp and feeling unaccustomed lightness from the fact that I no longer had to defend myself, justify myself or adjust to other people's expectations, I dialed the number of my realtor friend Carmen, and when I heard her cheerful hello, I said, do you remember when you said you could help me find a place to shop? Sure, she replied enthusiastically. Are you ready to start looking? Yes, I nodded, feeling the excitement of new horizons fill my chest. And I have one more question. Is it possible to rent a house by the lake as a vacation home? Absolutely, replied Carmen. Such real estate is in high demand now, especially in summer. It can bring great income. That's fine. Please send me everything you need to sign. We said goodbye, and I hung up, feeling real, mature excitement for the first time in months, not because someone approved of me, but because I made my own choice, defended my right to independence. I was going to buy myself a house in the city, cozy. Not necessarily big, but my own, and turn the house by the lake into profitable real estate, ceasing to allow anyone, even my family, to consider it my summer residence. In the following weeks, I carefully looked at apartments and small houses, and at the same time I met my father twice for coffee. While there was some awkwardness between us, but I felt that he was trying, and that was something. Carmen quickly found 3 tenants, married couples who wanted to spend the summer by the lake. And the rental income would cover my future mortgage payments. And then one evening, flipping through the sentences on my laptop, with a mug of tea in my hands, I suddenly realized that I was really happy. I have a job that I love, friends who support me, and now I will have a home that is truly mine. I no longer needed my father's approval, much less Francesca's attention. My phone vibrated, and a message from Sandra appeared on the screen. I miss the house by the lake. When can we come back? I smiled, my heart responded warmly, and I replied, whenever you want, it's mine, do you remember? And at that moment, for the first time since my mother died, I felt with all my soul that I understood what that word meant. Mine, my house, my life, my choice. No one, not my father, not Francesca, not the past, can decide what I deserve and where I belong. I was finally building the life I really wanted, and it was a really amazing feeling. Write a comment on what you think about this story and don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like it. See you soon.